The house wasn't on any map. That should have been my first warning. I found it while driving through rural Pennsylvania, following a GPS route that suddenly rerouted me off the highway. The road narrowed into cracked asphalt, trees closing in from both sides like a tunnel. My phone signal died. The radio hissed into static. And then, just beyond a bend, the house appeared. It stood alone in a clearing, a two-story wooden structure painted a color that might once have been white. The porch sagged under its own weight, and the windows were dark, reflecting the trees like black mirrors. There were no nearby houses. No power lines. No mailbox. I told myself it was abandoned. Still, I stopped. I was exhausted, low on fuel, and the sun was already bleeding into the horizon. Against my better judgment, I stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier here, thick with the smell of damp wood and something old, like a basement that had never seen light. As I approached the porch, the front door creaked open. By itself. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in the car and drive. But curiosity has always been my weakness. I called out, "Hello." No answer. The door waited. Inside, the house was colder than it should have been for late summer. Dust hung in the air, unmoving. The furniture looked untouched, as if someone had simply stood up and walked away years ago. A clock on the wall ticked loudly, though I couldn't see its hands moving. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but the handle wouldn't budge. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was old wood, warped by time. That's when I heard it. My name. Soft. Curious. Daniel. I hadn't said my name out loud. The voice came from upstairs. I backed away, every hair on my body standing on end. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice cracking. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow. Careful. Coming down the stairs. I ran. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, the walls narrowing as I sprinted toward what I thought was the back door. The house seemed to breathe around me, wood groaning, floorboards shifting under my feet. I burst into the kitchen and stopped dead. There was no door, only a wall, smooth and freshly painted. On the kitchen table sat a photograph. It was me, standing on the porch of the house, taken from inside. My blood ran cold. Behind the photo was a note, written in shaky handwriting. "It's been waiting for you." The lights flickered on. I screamed. Every room was suddenly lit by a sickly yellow glow, revealing details I hadn't noticed before. Scratches on the walls at shoulder height, deep grooves in the floor, as if something heavy had been dragged across it repeatedly. And names. Hundreds of names carved into the walls. Some were faded. Some were fresh. One of them read, "Daniel Carter. Mine." The house groaned, settling around me like a living thing stretching its limbs. Doors began to open on their own, one by one, revealing rooms that shouldn't exist, rooms filled with personal belongings, old suitcases, children's toys, wedding rings. Lives that had ended here. A whisper brushed my ear. "You stayed." I turned and saw her. She looked human at first, an old woman with pale skin and hollow eyes, but her shadow didn't match her shape. It stretched too long, crawling up the walls, bending in impossible ways. "This house," she said, smiling with too many teeth, "learns the people who enter it." I shook my head. "This isn't real." She laughed, and the sound echoed from every corner of the house. "That's what they all say." The walls began to close in. I ran upstairs, bursting into a bedroom that looked disturbingly familiar. My childhood bedroom. The same posters. The same desk. The same scars on the floor where I'd dropped a lamp. At age 12. "How do you know this?" I screamed. The answer came from behind me. "Because you gave it to us." I turned and saw myself standing there. Same face, same clothes, but his eyes were empty, black like the windows downstairs. "You stopped here before," he said calmly. "Years ago. You just don't remember." Memories flooded back. Another road trip, another wrong turn, another night I couldn't explain afterward. Waking up miles away with no memory of how I got there. The nightmares that followed. "You escaped," my double continued. "But the house doesn't forget." He stepped closer. "It keeps a part of you." The walls began to pulse, the names glowing faintly. I realized then that the house wasn't haunted. It was hungry. I lunged past him and smashed through a window, glass tearing into my arms as I fell into darkness. I woke up in my car. The engine was running. The road was wide again. My phone had signal. The house was gone. I laughed hysterically, convincing myself it had all been a hallucination. I drove until dawn without stopping. For weeks afterward, everything felt normal. Until I noticed the scratches on my arms hadn't healed. Until my reflection sometimes blinked when I didn't. Until, late one night, I heard a familiar voice whisper from my closet, "Daniel." And when I opened the door, there was a wall. Smooth, freshly painted, with just enough space left for one more name.